In a world full of uncertainty, embracing God's supreme rule offers profound peace. By trusting in His divine authority, we find assurance that His purpose prevails over all our plans. 1. God understands your pain. Life's journey can be fraught with challenges and moments of deep sorrow. It's during these trying times that many of us question whether anyone truly understands our pain. However, as believers, we can find solace in the profound truth that God sees our pain and hears our cry. He is intimately aware of our suffering, and His compassion knows no bounds. In the depths of our despair, we must remember to trust in His divine compassion and perfect timing. God's omniscience is a comforting assurance that He is fully aware of every tear we shed and every silent plea we make. The Bible tells us in Psalm 56:8, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." This powerful verse reminds us that our pain does not go unnoticed. Each tear we shed is precious to God, and He remembers each moment of our suffering. His awareness of our pain is not passive. It is an active engagement with our lives, demonstrating His deep love and concern for us. In the book of Exodus, we see God's awareness and response to the suffering of His people. When the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt, God said to Moses, "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them." Exodus 3-7-8. This passage reveals God's active involvement in the lives of His people. He is not a distant deity, indifferent to our struggles. Instead, He is a compassionate Father who sees, hears, and responds to our cries for help. One of the most poignant examples of God's empathy is found in the New Testament, in the story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. When Jesus arrived in Bethany and saw the mourning of Mary and Martha, He was deeply moved and wept. John 11:35. Jesus' tears were a testament to His genuine compassion for human suffering. Though He knew He would raise Lazarus from the dead, He still felt the pain of those around Him and shared in their sorrow. This story not only illustrates Jesus' power over death, but also His profound empathy and shared suffering with humanity. In moments of deep pain, it is easy to feel isolated and forgotten. However, God's awareness of our suffering is coupled with His promise to never leave us nor forsake us. In Deuteronomy 31:6, He encourages us, saying, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." This promise is a reminder that we are never truly alone, even in our darkest hours. God is always with us, offering His unwavering support and comfort. God's timing is perfect, even when it does not align with our own expectations. In the story of Joseph, we see a man who endured betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment. Yet throughout his trials, God was with him, orchestrating events that would ultimately lead to the saving of many lives. Genesis 50:20. Joseph's story teaches us that even when we cannot see it, God is at work in our lives, using our pain and suffering to bring about His greater plan. 2. Waiting in faith. Life often presents us with challenges that test our faith and patience. As believers, we are called to trust in God's perfect timing, even when it seems like our prayers go unanswered. This trust is a testament to our faith, teaching us to wait patiently for God's divine plan to unfold. The journey of waiting is not easy, but it is a vital part of our spiritual growth and development. One of the most powerful examples of waiting on God is found in the story of Joseph. Joseph's life was filled with trials and tribulations. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and unjustly imprisoned. Despite these hardships, Joseph never lost faith in God's plan. In Genesis 50:20, Joseph reassures his brothers, saying, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph's unwavering faith and patience during his years of suffering ultimately led to a position where he could save his family and many others. His story teaches us that God's timing is impeccable, and that our periods of waiting are preparing us for greater blessings. The Bible is replete with instances where God's timing plays a crucial role. Abraham and Sarah waited nearly a century for the fulfillment of God's promise of a son. In Genesis 21, we read about the birth of Isaac, a fulfillment that seemed impossible due to their old age. Yet God's promise came to pass at the perfect time. Their story reminds us that God's delays are not denials, but rather a means to strengthen our faith and trust in Him. As it says in Ecclesiastes 3:1, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens." The story of Lazarus in John 11 further illustrates the importance of trusting God's timing. Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus that their brother Lazarus was ill, expecting him to come and heal them. However, Jesus delayed his visit, and Lazarus died. When Jesus finally arrived, he performed a miraculous resurrection, demonstrating his power over death. Jesus' delay was not a sign of neglect, but a strategic act to reveal a greater glory. This teaches us that even when God seems silent or delayed, He is working behind the scenes for a more significant purpose. Patience as a virtue is emphasized throughout the Scriptures. James 5:7-8 instructs us, "Be patient, then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near." This passage likens our waiting to that of a farmer waiting for his crops, highlighting the active and hopeful nature of patience. It's not just about waiting idly, but about maintaining our faith and trust in God's plan. In our fast-paced world, waiting can feel counterproductive and frustrating. We are conditioned to expect instant results, and the concept of waiting goes against our cultural norms. However, as believers, we must understand that God's timing often involves waiting. This period of waiting is not a time of inactivity, but a period of growth, refinement, and preparation. Romans 5:3-4 reminds us, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope." During our times of waiting, it is crucial to resist the temptation to take matters into our own hands. Proverbs 3:5-6 advises, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." Taking control can lead to complications and frustration, whereas trusting in God's timing brings peace and fulfillment. In conclusion, trusting in God's timing is a profound act of faith. It involves recognizing that our periods of waiting are opportunities for spiritual growth and preparation for greater blessings. By maintaining our patience and trust in God's perfect timing, we align ourselves with His divine plan, which is always for our ultimate good. Let us embrace this journey of waiting with faith, hope, and trust in our loving Heavenly Father, knowing that His timing is always perfect. 3. Do not lose hope. In the fast-paced world we live in, patience often feels like a lost virtue. We are accustomed to instant results and immediate gratification, making the act of waiting challenging and, at times, overwhelming. Yet, As Christians, we are called to cultivate patience, recognizing that God's timing is impeccable and His plans are always for our ultimate good. Through the teachings of the Bible and the stories of faith, we learn that patience is not merely about waiting, but about trusting in God's sovereignty and His divine timing. One of the most profound lessons on patience is found in the story of Abraham and Sarah. God promised Abraham that he would become the father of many nations, yet the fulfillment of this promise seemed impossible as years went by and both he and Sarah grew old. Despite their initial doubts and attempts to take matters into their own hands, as seen in the birth of Ishmael, they eventually witnessed God's promise fulfilled with the birth of Isaac when Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90. This story, chronicled in Genesis 21, reminds us that God's delays are not denials. Instead, they are opportunities for us to grow in faith and patience, trusting that God will fulfill His promises in His perfect timing. James 5-7a provides further insight into the virtue of patience, urging us to be patient, then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. This passage likens our patience to that of a farmer who waits with expectation and hope for the harvest. Just as the farmer understands that the crops need time to grow and mature, we too must understand that our prayers and desires require time to align with God's perfect plan. Patience also played a crucial role in the story of Joseph. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and imprisoned unjustly, Joseph endured years of suffering and uncertainty. However, he remained patient and faithful, trusting in God's plan. In Genesis 50:20, Joseph tells his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph's story teaches us that even in the midst of hardship and waiting, God is at work, orchestrating events for our good and His glory. Romans 5-3-4 further highlights the importance of patience in our spiritual journey. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope. This passage underscores that patience is not a passive state, but an active and deliberate choice to trust in God's faithfulness. It is through patience that we develop perseverance and character, ultimately leading to a stronger and more resilient faith. In our modern lives, where everything is expected to happen instantly, the concept of waiting can seem counterintuitive. However, as followers of Christ, we must recognize that God's timing seldom aligns with our own. Isaiah 55:8-9 reminds us, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." Understanding this helps us embrace patience, knowing that God sees the bigger picture and knows what is best for us. The story of Lazarus in John 11 also illustrates the significance of patience and trust in God's timing. When Jesus was informed of Lazarus's illness, He deliberately delayed his visit. This delay resulted in Lazarus's death, causing sorrow and confusion among his family. However, Jesus used this moment to demonstrate God's power by raising Lazarus from the dead, proving that God's delays are purposeful and His timing perfect. In conclusion, embracing patience as a virtue involves trusting in God's impeccable timing and His divine plan for our lives. While waiting can be difficult and sometimes painful, it is an essential part of our spiritual growth. By developing patience, we learn to trust more deeply in God's sovereignty, recognizing that He is always at work behind the scenes, orchestrating events for our good. Let us, therefore, cultivate patience, standing firm in our faith and embracing the journey of waiting, knowing that God's timing is always perfect and His plans are always for our ultimate benefit. Please comment number 1 so God can help you have a wonderful day. 4. Faith during silence. I know your heart is weary, and the silence can feel unbearable. You have poured your soul into prayer, yearning for a sign that I hear you, that I am at work in your life. I understand your cries, your silent pleas, and the depths of your suffering. It is during these moments of silence that I ask you to trust me more deeply than ever before. Consider the story of Joseph, a young man betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and unjustly imprisoned. For years, it seemed as though I had abandoned him, yet I was with him in every trial. I was orchestrating a plan that would not only deliver him, but also save many lives. Joseph reassured his brothers, saying, "You meant to harm me, but God meant it for good to achieve what is now happening, the saving of many lives." Genesis 50:20. Just because I seem silent, my child, does not mean I am absent. I am always working behind the scenes, arranging every detail for a greater purpose that you may not yet see. When you feel trapped in a pit of despair or a prison of waiting, remember that these are not wasted moments. Like the seed that must remain buried in the soil before it can sprout, your faith is being cultivated in this time of waiting. Trust that the silence is a season of preparation. I am strengthening your character, deepening your faith, and preparing you for the blessings to come. Remember, my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. Isaiah 55:8. Trust in my plan and my timing. Waiting can be one of the most challenging aspects of your faith journey. It tests your patience and stretches your endurance. But know this, my beloved, my delays are not my denials. Every moment of waiting is an opportunity for you to draw closer to me, to lean not on your own understanding, but to acknowledge me in all your ways. Proverbs 3:5-6. I see the end from the beginning, and I know the perfect time for every answer to your prayers. Think of Mary and Martha, who called out to Jesus when their brother Lazarus was ill. They hoped I would come immediately, but I delayed my visit. When I arrived, Lazarus had been in the grave for 4 days. They were heartbroken and confused, wondering why I had not come sooner. But my delay was for a greater purpose. I performed a miracle that revealed my power over death itself. Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? John 11:40. Trust that my timing is always for a reason, and my plans are to prosper you and not to harm you. Jeremiah 29:11. 5. Patience as a virtue. I see your struggles, your tears, and your silent pleas. You wonder why certain events unfold as they do, why your prayers seem to go unanswered. I understand your confusion and doubt, but I want you to know that I am in control, even when it doesn't seem like it. My purpose will always prevail, and my timing is perfect. You may have many plans in your heart, but it is my purpose that will stand. Proverbs 19:21. Trusting in my supreme rule means acknowledging that my ways and thoughts are far beyond your comprehension. While you may not always understand my plans, you can trust that I am orchestrating everything for your ultimate good. Remember the story of Abraham and Sarah. I promised Abraham that he would become the father of many nations, yet he had to wait until he was 100 years old, and Sarah was 90, before their son Isaac was born. Genesis 21. Imagine waiting for nearly 100 years for a promise to be fulfilled. But my timing was impeccable, and through their patience, my promise was realized. Their story is a testament to my faithfulness and the perfect timing of my plans. When you are in a season of waiting, it's easy to feel impatient, anxious, or even doubtful. You might wonder if I hear your prayers or if I will act on your behalf. But my child, think of the waiting period as a time of preparation, refinement, and growth. Just as Abraham and Sarah faced many hurdles, I used that time to shape them into vessels ready for the fulfillment of my promise. You might feel as though you are ready for what you desire, but if you could see from my perspective, you would understand that there is more for you to learn, more growth needed, more faith to be cultivated. Ecclesiastes 3:1 reminds you that He has made everything beautiful in its time. Trust that my timing is impeccable, even when it doesn't align with yours. During periods of waiting, it's natural to feel like time is slipping away and to become restless. But my dear child, know that I am never late. I am always on time. Psalm 103:19 assures you, "The Lord has established His throne in heaven, and His kingdom rules over all." This means that no matter how chaotic or uncertain life may seem, I am in control. My throne is established, and my rule is supreme. True peace comes from surrendering your worries and concerns to me, knowing that I am in command. Philippians 4:6-7 guides you to be anxious for nothing, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Trust that as you hand over your anxieties to me, I will give you a peace that surpasses all understanding. 6. Trust in God's sovereignty. In a world fraught with unpredictability and chaos, finding solace and stability can often feel challenging. Yet, as believers, we are called to recognize and trust in God's supreme rule, understanding that His divine authority governs all aspects of our lives. Embracing God's sovereignty involves acknowledging that while we may have our own plans and aspirations, it is ultimately His purpose that will prevail. This understanding can provide profound peace and confidence, even amidst life's uncertainties. Proverbs 19:21 offers a reassuring truth. Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. This verse highlights the contrast between human intentions and divine purpose. While we may chart our own paths and make our own plans, it is God's overarching purpose that will ultimately come to pass. Recognizing this truth allows us to relinquish our need for control and embrace the peace that comes from trusting in His superior plan. The story of King Nebuchadnezzar, as recounted in the book of Daniel, vividly illustrates the concept of God's supreme rule. Nebuchadnezzar, the powerful ruler of Babylon, was given a dream that none of his wise men could interpret. Daniel, a faithful servant of God, revealed the dream's meaning. Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom would eventually fall, and God's kingdom would endure forever. Despite Nebuchadnezzar's initial pride and refusal to acknowledge God's sovereignty, he ultimately recognized that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone He wishes. Daniel 4:32. This acknowledgement of God's supreme authority is a powerful testament to His control over all earthly matters. Similarly, the story of Joseph, as found in Genesis, underscores the importance of trusting in God's supreme rule. Despite being sold into slavery by his brothers and enduring years of hardship, Joseph remained faithful to God. In Genesis 50:20, Joseph reassures his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph's experiences demonstrate that even when faced with adversity, God's purpose is at work, guiding events toward a greater good that may not be immediately apparent. The life of Jesus also exemplifies trust in God's supreme rule. During his time on earth, Jesus faced immense suffering and rejection, culminating in his crucifixion. Despite the apparent defeat, Jesus' death and resurrection were part of God's divine plan for the salvation of humanity. In John 19:30, Jesus declared, "It is finished," signifying that his sacrificial work was complete and aligned with God's ultimate purpose. This moment of apparent defeat was, in fact, the fulfillment of God's plan for redemption, demonstrating that his purposes are always accomplished, even when they seem contrary to our expectations. In our personal lives, recognizing and trusting in God's supreme rule means understanding that our plans and desires are subject to his will. It requires humility and faith to accept that while we may strive and plan, it is God's purpose that will prevail. This trust is not passive but active, involving a daily surrender to his will and an acknowledgement of his authority over every aspect of our lives. Jeremiah 29:11 offers a comforting reminder of God's good plans for us. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." This verse reinforces the idea that while our plans may falter, God's plans for us are always filled with hope and promise. Trusting in his supreme rule involves believing that his intentions are for our ultimate good, even when we cannot see the entire picture. Please like this video so God will always be with you. 7. Finding peace in God's timing. I see your struggles, your tears, and your silent pleas. You wonder why certain events unfold as they do, why your prayers seem to go unanswered. I understand your confusion and doubt, but I want you to know that I am in control, even when it doesn't seem like it. My purpose will always prevail, and my timing is perfect. You may have many plans in your heart, but it is my purpose that will stand. Proverbs 19:21. Trusting in my supreme rule means acknowledging that my ways and thoughts are far beyond your comprehension. While you may not always understand my plans, you can trust that I am orchestrating everything for your ultimate good. Remember the story of Abraham and Sarah. I promised Abraham that he would become the father of many nations, yet he had to wait until he was 100 years old, and Sarah was 90, before their son Isaac was born. Genesis 21. Imagine waiting for nearly 100 years for a promise to be fulfilled. But my timing was impeccable, and through their patience, my promise was realized. Their story is a testament to my faithfulness and the perfect timing of my plans. When you are in a season of waiting, it's easy to feel impatient, anxious, or even doubtful. You might wonder if I hear your prayers or if I will act on your behalf. But, my child, think of the waiting period as a time of preparation, refinement, and growth. Just as Abraham and Sarah faced many hurdles, I used that time to shape them into vessels ready for the fulfillment of my promise. You might feel as though you are ready for what you desire, but if you could see from my perspective, you would understand that there is more for you to learn, more growth needed, more faith to be cultivated. Ecclesiastes 3:1 reminds you that he has made everything beautiful in its time. Trust that my timing is impeccable, even when it doesn't align with yours. During periods of waiting, it's natural to feel like time is slipping away and to become restless. But my dear child, know that I am never late. I am always on time. Psalm 103:19 assures you, "The Lord has established his throne in heaven, and his kingdom rules over all." This means that no matter how chaotic or uncertain life may seem, I am in control. My throne is established, and my rule is supreme. True peace comes from surrendering your worries and concerns to me, knowing that I am in command. Philippians 4-6-7 guides you to be anxious for nothing, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Trust that as you hand over your anxieties to me, I will give you a peace that surpasses all understanding. So, my beloved child, take comfort in my supreme rule. Yield your plans, your will, and your timeline to me. Trust that I know what is best for you, and I am orchestrating every detail of your life for your benefit. Remember that I am always with you, guiding you, and preparing you for the incredible future I have planned. Hold on to faith, for my promises are true, and my love for you is everlasting. Trusting in God's supreme rule brings peace, knowing His plans prevail over ours. Embrace His sovereignty, for His purpose guides us to greater good and hope.